Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Cervello Live. It's the 23rd of July 2020. Hope you're doing well. The sun is shining outside, and we've got another hopefully insightful, hopefully useful show with an amazing guest. Today we've got Simon Lewin. Hello, Simon, how are you?
I'm very well, Chris, and yourself?
Things are very quickly returning back to normal, so it's all good fun. So I'm having a good time. Right, just so we're aware of what we're going to be talking about today, I want to talk about a little bit about social psychology today. So I'm going to talk about why a tiny bit of expertise is actually not the greatest thing in the world, because it gives you that false confidence. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, and it's a well-known thing in social psychology. And then we're going to move on to talk to Simon about East London Business Place, the Building Legacies programme, what they're doing to support local businesses in East London. But before we do that, let's talk about why actually a little bit of knowledge is quite a dangerous thing. So, have you heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect before, Simon?
No, I haven't.
Okay, well, hopefully it'll be useful for you too. I've got to be honest, I am a bit of a social psychology geek. So one of my amateur interests is just to understand how as humans we think, and certainly in our business, it helps understanding how people think about life, think about money, think about how to make decisions, because that allows us to support our clients make better financial decisions. So what I want to share with you today is why just a little bit of learning is a dangerous thing. And I wrote a blog on this on the Cervello website probably about 3 or 4 months ago, and I found this guy. Now, Simon, you can't see my screen, but there's a guy of a sort of probably a 16th century painting of a medieval looking man with the best hair you've ever seen. And I've got to be honest, since lockdown, I've been having quite a lot of hair envy because I haven't got that much left. So this guy, as you can see if you're watching live, has got pretty decent hair. And this guy's name is Alexander Pope. Now, Alexander Pope was probably the greatest British poet you've never heard of. And when I started reading his stuff, I was surprised that I'd never heard of him. But he wrote a poem about, and again, this was back in the sort of 17th and 18th century. He wrote a poem about effectively the Dunning-Kruger effect, but he wrote it before Dunning-Kruger ever started studying this, because they studied this quite recently. And he wrote, "A little learning is a dangerous thing. Drink deep and taste not the Pyrenean spring. Their shallow draughts intoxicate the brain, and drinking largely sobers us again." So effectively, he was talking about the fact that sometimes the challenge we've got is when we learn something new is our confidence, because we're learning at quite a pace, goes up at a pace, and we assume we know more than we actually do. It's not until we get to a point where we realise start to realise how deep and broad the subject might be, we realise that we don't know what we don't know, and the subject is broad. Certainly my experience with that, Simon, has been in business, because when we started 11 years ago, I assumed I knew how to run a business, and very quickly realised how much I didn't know. I'd imagine a lot of your clients are the same, right?
Yeah, that is the case, and I think often there is that passion to get on with what they specialise in, and the peripheral stuff sort of gets by the wayside as it's forgotten to some extent.
Yeah, absolutely right. But I think if you're good at anything, it's been a learning process, and that learning journey takes time. But I think when you first start something, it feels easy because you've got a little bit of knowledge about it. Now, interestingly, Alexander Pope wrote this poem back in the 17th century, but it wasn't until quite recently that Dunning and Kruger started to do actual science-based research into this thing, and their research came from it was inspired by another guy, and it was inspired by a guy called MacArthur Wheeler. Now, the story of MacArthur Wheeler is a weird one, because he was a bank robber, because he was what he thought was that by putting lemon juice on his face, he'd be invisible to the surveillance cameras in the bank. Now, the reason that he thought this is because he'd been doing some research, and he'd read that a component part of invisible ink was lemon juice, so therefore lemon juice must make him invisible to cameras. And when he got caught, and again, MacArthur Wheeler, Google it, the story is fascinating. When he got caught, all he said is, "But I had the lemon juice on my face. How did the cameras see me?" Kruger and Dunning and Kruger looked at that and went, now obviously, clearly, we're not going to make that mistake, and hopefully none of us are going to be robbing banks, but is this an extreme example of overconfidence being based on a small amount of information? And they started to research it. So Dunning and Kruger looked at this and said, actually, what we start with is low confidence when we know nothing about a particular subject. As soon as we start to learn it, it goes really high, but that's at the point when it's at its most dangerous, because we're super confident, but we haven't got enough knowledge to focus forward. Then when we realise how much we don't know, we're in a position where our confidence goes all the way down. And then it slowly starts to build as we properly gain expertise. And I don't know about you, I've realised that as a business owner, that expertise takes decades sometimes, Simon, right?
Yeah, it can do, and I think also the challenges that we've got currently also have a significant impact in terms of our own well-being as well as the business well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, as you say, those challenges never end, do they? You know,
No.
you're always learning. And certainly in our world, when we're sitting down with clients, we like to work with pretty well-informed clients. The challenge sometimes we've got is well-informed clients sometimes are overconfident about what they know. It's funny, I had an email this morning from one of our existing clients who had read something in the press about inheritance tax, got the wrong understanding of the rules, and sent me a bit of a panicked email. Now, it's all fine, we've calmed him down, we've made sure he's okay, and he's got a clear understanding of the plan again. But that little bit of knowledge from what he'd read in the paper, then created a misunderstanding that we then had to fix. And we get a lot of, like, when new clients come in, they say, okay, Chris, you're a financial advisor. What shares are you recommending that I buy? And again, that's not what a good quality financial planner or advisor does. A good quality financial planner or advisor invests widely and wisely and doesn't pick shares. And it's that sort of what you read in the papers with a little bit of knowledge that potentially trips you up. In terms of making financial mistakes. So just be aware of that. And we're, to be clear, the Dunning-Kruger effect, we're human, we're all guilty of it in all areas of our life. One other thing that I want to mention is just competence. And again, this is a psychological thing. When we start off in a journey in learning something new, we realise how much we don't know. But we don't realise we don't know it, and that's where overconfidence comes in. Then we move to conscious incompetence. We realise we don't know. We're heading back down on that curve, and then we slowly build up to conscious competence again. And then you get to a point where you don't even need to think about it. You are good at something without even thinking about it. That's called unconscious competence. And we, as professionals, as individuals, we still need to continue sharpening that saw. Now, the reason I mention this, now clearly, have you ever put lemon juice on your face, Simon, to avoid a camera? Because I haven't.
I can't say I have. I can't say I have.
Good to hear, mate. But the interesting thing is, even though clearly nobody's silly enough to do that, apart from Henry MacArthur or whatever his name was, the reality is the Dunning-Kruger effect exists with all of us. And one article that I read quite recently highlighted this. So, just to be clear, one thing that we helped campaign at Cervello, one thing we helped campaign against is people getting cold calls on their pension. So now it's illegal for somebody to get a cold call on their pension. And there's an amazing guy called Darren Cook who spearheaded a campaign that we got behind to stop people getting scammed effectively through pension cold calls. But there was a new article that came out recently. It said 14% of degree-educated individuals, they did a massive survey, accepted a cold call from their pension and took advice based on that cold call. Now, the only thing I can think of in terms of that is just that overconfidence. You know, I'm smart, I'm talented, I'm not going to get scammed. And I think sometimes you need to be super careful about where you get your advice. And so I think my point, and talking about the Dunning-Kruger effect, is if you know a bit about money and you are in the journey of building wealth, or you've got some big financial decisions comes up, accept that you know a bit, but try and fill that gap with hopefully professional advice from your trusted source. And I decided to give a go at some poetry, so just bear with me. This is going to be bad, Simon, but let's give it a go anyway. A little bit of knowledge can do you harm, especially when it comes to money. It increases your confidence and makes you more accountable, and that just won't be funny. When making important financial decisions, if you receive a call, don't rush. Take some time, consult an expert, get advice, and speak to somebody you trust. Now, clearly I'm no Alexander Pope, I admit that, right? I admit that right now. But hopefully the message is clear. If you've got some big financial decisions coming up and you are confident that you're building your knowledge about money, hopefully speak to an expert and fill that gap. And what I've done there is leave my contact details on the side in case you'd like to talk to us about helping you fill that gap. We do that for loads of smart, talented people. So thank you for bearing with us on that, Simon. And I've got to apologise for the really poor poem.
Oh, I think it's better than I would have done. You know what my artistic skills are like.
Well,
I'm not a creative.
Yeah, I've seen your art, mate. And if your poem's anything like it, I've got to be honest, we're not on the right track, are we?
No,
but
we're not.
The good news is you are super talented in a bunch of different areas. So you can explain a little bit about that. Tell us about you.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. As Chris kindly said, my name is Simon Lewin, and I'm a business growth manager for East London Business Place. My background, I think in total I've had nearly 25 years experience in sales, retail and corporate. And back in 2011, I decided to embark on a career change, and my feeling was at the time that I needed to empower SMEs to develop their full potential and to actually earn the money that they deserve. So my first contact with East London Business Place was actually as an external trainer, where I was doing sales training and support. And back in December 2018, I came on board as part of the team. And my remit now is to support businesses across London, but I'm specifically assigned to support businesses within the Havering area.
Okay, amazing. And talk to me a little bit about East London Business Place and what it does.
Right, okay, so it's a East London Business Place, or we refer to it as being ELBP, is a free local enterprise initiative that's run by Canary Wharf Group in conjunction with East London Business Alliance, which is a charity, also known as ELBA, and they came into existence in 2008. Since inception, the programs being offered by ELBP have been varied. What we have been looking at is really supply chain brokerage and supporting businesses in terms of doing better business through the programs referred to as Ready to Supply the City and Fit for Legacy. During that time, what we've done is probably supported somewhere in the region of 5,000 SMEs. And contract-wise, we've helped businesses win 290 million in contracts and work orders.
Do you find that there is a gap in terms of when you first engage with an SME business in what they've got in place to make sure they're ready to tender? And if so, typically what is that?
I think it's a mismatch. It maybe goes back to what you were saying just now, actually, is thinking that they're ready, but they're not ready. So there are certain criteria that you have to have. Many businesses do go out to tender depending on the format that they're actually running with. Are looking for people to have the right policies, the right insurance in place, and that is really quite key, but also to have some sort of track record, so whoever they're investing in can prove that they can deliver, and that from a perspective of choosing a provider, that they will be able to fulfill the whole project and not disappear halfway through the project. So those are really the key things. And protecting the business, I suppose, in any way that people can.
Yeah, it's interesting. we were in a networking event that you very kindly ran earlier in the week, and we had a conversation about business protection and the amount of business owners, SME business owners, who underestimate the importance of doing that is incredible, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I think what that meeting also brought up is many people don't have business continuity as an option. So if they fall sick or something prevents them from working, who's going to fulfill the obligation? And we've recently heard quite regularly about second wave. And I think the issue is, even if you haven't got a continuity plan now, it is important to have some sort of continuity in place moving forward to protect you and keep your business running.
Yeah, 100%.
Very.
Talk to me a little bit about, because I know it's about East London Business Place, but specifically, what is the Building Legacies program that you run?
Right, so the Building Legacies program is a program which is designed to support businesses on wherever their journey is. With this particular program, we've got added support from Lewin College, and we've also got funding from some of the London boroughs, including Havering. They see that businesses do require support wherever they are, and in order for them to continue to be viable and support not only themselves as individuals and their families, etc., and the people that they employ, but it also helps the economy. So the process is trying to ensure that people are doing better business. And I would say, from my own personal perspective, one of the reasons I wanted to get involved, particularly from a sales perspective, is people often charge a figure which doesn't truly reflect what they're worth. They don't value themselves. If they don't value themselves, how can other people value them? Yeah. And in many cases, people can often undercharge and subsidize a client that they're actually working for. So really, from that perspective, it is very, very important to get your pricing structure right, make sure your client type is right, so you know who you should be working with and who will value you and how you value them.
Yeah, 100%. I think that that's one of the things that I've learned in business. You know, it's important to make sure that, number one, you're delivering value, but also make sure that you're charging fairly for everybody concerned. And that sometimes means, and we've done it a few times, putting your prices up to just fairly reflect the value you're adding to a client. And I think emotionally that's sometimes quite difficult to do. And we've only done it in our business, but I'm pretty sure that you've had loads of conversations with your clients about putting prices up and experienced a bit of resistance.
Yeah, no, most definitely. But I think that the reality is that if you take that to the next step, is that if you've got a valuable client, you could probably do a lot more with that client, and you could probably offer a lot more services. I think 6 times more effort spent trying to find new business in the UK than actually trying to find or to work with an existing client and actually truly inform them of what you're doing and how you do it.
Yeah, it was interesting. I think I shared this example. During lockdown, we were really conscious that as markets were a bit more volatile, we needed to be more actively engaged with our clients to make sure that they were okay. So I've got the Cervello team and I really focused on getting in touch with clients and making sure they were looked after. And as we come out of lockdown, that's really paid dividends because of that. Just because of that increased engagement. I think it's vital for any business to value their existing clients. Talk to me a little bit about the best story that describes the work you do.
I would say from a personal perspective, I've been working with a client and they've managed to secure a contract worth nearly £300,000. I can't take the full credit for it. It's got to come from the person as well. We can show them what they need to do in order to achieve those sorts of things. But ultimately, it's up to the business owner to put themselves in the right place. From a personal perspective, the small wins to me are just as important. When you get a client that comes back to you all excited, saying, "I implemented what you suggested and it worked," and I got the results that we were talking about. And that sort of thing, to me, is just as important as someone winning a contract, because people have tried something different. They've been open-minded and prepared to do something that they feel might not be something that they sit comfortably with, but they know that they would need to try and do something like that in order to take the business to the next level or to bring in the relevant type of business that they're looking for.
But again, it goes back to that Dunning-Kruger effect, doesn't it? You don't know what you don't know. And the reality is that sometimes you need, even if you are good at what you do, run a business, or your particular trade or profession, the reality of it is taking advice and guidance from somebody else is sometimes the nudge you need to drive you forward. Whereas if you tried to do that yourself, it just won't work. You need an external coach to sometimes support you to do that, don't you? Yeah.
I've often, during this lockdown period, really said that we're more an accountability partner to many clients. When you're at home and you're working, people don't always get what you do, except you're sitting on a computer or you're making phone calls, and you're not always sure whether you're doing the right thing if you've got no one to bounce the ideas off of. So, that has been our role. What my mantra has been is we're not only supporting businesses, but we're supporting the business owners behind that. And that is not only the business elements, but it's also to some extent the mental well-being of people, and through some of the workshops and some of the networking that we've done, there has been some focus towards that, because we're doing things that we're not used to. There's a lot of worry, there's a lot of concern about survival, etc. And it's great to see now that things are moving back in the right direction. But there's been a lot of worry along the way, and a lot of changes along the way as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think being a business owner teaches you to be resilient to a certain extent, but I think the recent situation has meant that there should be more focus on people's mental health, and having that check-in just to say you're okay is really important, I think. Now, I know you mentioned before you do a decent amount of work connecting SMEs to contracts. Talk to me
Yes.
about a little bit about the work you do in that area.
Well, I was going to say, it's not just purely about the contracts and making people aware about contracts as we come across them, but there is also this element of keeping things local. If we look at the process that's taken place over the last few months, a lot of people, when we were told to stay at home, decided if they had to go and buy something, they'd stick to something local and not venture out too far. Hopefully that's kept some of the local businesses, the independents, going. And what we've done within that with that sort of mindset is saying, well, if that's the case, why don't we try and get businesses to work together within the same borough? So rather than having cross-borough networking, which we've always done and will continue to do, why don't we keep the community together within a certain borough? So Tuesday we did our third keeping the Havering business community together. And what we started to see as a result of that is that businesses are starting to do business with each other. There's also the opportunity of collaborations as well, which is always great to see. And Chris and I often have this joke about business buzzwords. I'm going to use the P word, pivoting. Now, as part of the pivoting process, using someone that you collaborate with to offer more services is an acceptable thing now, because you might already have the client base for that particular individual and you're enhancing the service that you're offering. It's a win for everybody. Yeah. So I think that's really important. What we've also done within the Building Legacies program is set up an online, what we call marketplace. So businesses can showcase their business, their offerings to the rest of the business community. On a larger scale, we do have larger buyer organisations. Prior to lockdown, we had meet the buyer type events, but we still have those buyers that are interested in other services that are being offered, and they will come to us and say, oh, we're looking for, can you provide? And what we're starting to do is to actually signpost them to the marketplace, and that's really developing very, very quickly. And I'm sure again there'll be a measure in place at some point to see how much business is being created as a result of that interaction on that platform.
It's an interesting one. You talk about that win-win. I'm finishing off my book at the minute, which is nothing to do with the business. It's a book based on the hobby that I've got, which is run a podcast with my daughter on kindness, and we talk about kindness in all aspects. But one of the things that we talk about in the book is kindness in business, and I think actually that win-win approach, only working with people where you can add value and you can support them, only taking on clients like that, but always looking for relationships where nobody's losing out, you both benefit from the relationship, is fundamentally important. And that to me is about just doing things in a decent way. One of our values is do well, do good. And the fact that I can get up every morning and be proud of what I do is fundamentally important. I think it's really, really important. I think the other interesting thing you talked about is that sort of local collaboration. Certainly, we're seeing a bit more of that. But I know ELBP and the Building Legacies program do loads more, including run quite a lot of training. So tell me a little bit about the training you run.
Okay, so the team that we've got is an experienced team that have either had businesses or still currently run businesses, but there are areas where we feel as an organisation it's important to have specialists to come in. So periodically we will go to tender for external trainers. And with those external trainers, what they were doing pre-lockdown, we're doing face-to-face workshops. They've now moved to webinars. And the sorts of things that we were looking at originally were things like getting better at social media, using videos to promote what you do, utilising things like LinkedIn to create relationships, the procurement stuff that we've been speaking about, and also sales strategies, that type of stuff. We've also successfully run things like developing your business plan, your sales forecast, etc. More recently with the webinars, it is about that pivoting stuff. It's returning back to work safely now because of the COVID secure type of guidelines, which will have an impact on you, how your business is set up potentially. And also, if people are going to come and visit your premises, they need to also be aware that they're coming into a safe environment. Yeah. So, you know, those are the things we're trying to make it relevant, real, and focused on exactly what is needed at that particular point in time. Topical, so, right? Yeah, I mean, well, that's our focus.
Yeah, 100%. It's funny you mentioned about. I mean, that's the second time you've used the word pivot, Simon, and I've got my business buzzwords bingo card out at the minute. Funny you should, because I've told you the story. I think I've shared it on the podcast before about the kids starting a buzzwords bingo and it being posted on my fridge throughout lockdown because I was repeating certain phrases too many times, and I made the mistake of telling that to a journalist friend of mine, Ollie, who decided to publish it in an article about me 2 weeks ago. So I think I'm guilty as anybody with buzzwords. They're going to haunt me. But I'll post the link on the show notes so that you can see that article, and I'll email you a copy, Simon, because it is, the end is quite funny. I think you'll appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Talk to me about the tips that you share with businesses. So what would you share with a business who's currently in a position where they're looking to change their focus, or they're looking to make sure their business is resilient moving forward? What tips are you sharing at the minute to support those businesses?
Well, I would say don't be frightened to ask for help. It's not a weakness. Having some sort of an accountability partner or someone you can talk to that's not emotionally involved in your business or not financially dependent on your business can actually sometimes help see the wood through the trees. Often I think people see a business as a child, a family member that they have to grow and nurture. But it's making sure that those right decisions are right for that individual and for the business. We've mentioned about sort of the collaboration side of things to enhance offerings. I think that is really, really important. And with that sort of realignment aspect is, and collaboration aspect is maybe relooking at the sales forecast and the business plan. I'm doing quite a little bit of that at the moment. And there are still some businesses that have not migrated their business or not looked at ways of potentially migrating their business to an online platform. Now, that might mean that they either are doing a slightly different product or a completely different product. I've had clients have gone from sort of clothing to PPE, and from their point of view, that's been really a very good learning curve from a practical perspective. But I think it is very, very important to look at what the next few months are likely to bring and what you are likely to bring in through your business, and what you need to do if there is going to be a shortfall to make up that shortfall with maybe a new service, a new provision, a new product.
Yeah. I think you're right. I mean, what lockdown has been for a lot of our new clients that are approaching us now, either being referred by our existing clients or referred by our professional introducers, is lockdown's giving them an opportunity to reflect. And certainly if I look at what I've been spending time during lockdown, even though we've been busy with work, is to refocus on what our next medium-term plan looks like. So what does our next 10 years look like? I think that's been a really good opportunity. Actually, even though it's been a tough time and quite painful for a lot of people, this lockdown period, it's also been an opportunity to sort of refresh and refocus. What do you think?
Well, I would say that, and I'm amazed about how many people have actually learnt new skills, and gone on to courses, overcome any excuse that they can think of to say, well, I'm too busy because I can't get round to doing it. They've actually said, I'm not really busy. I can't use that as an excuse. I need to learn about social media. I set up my own Instagram account at the beginning of lockdown.
Are you sharing some of your amazing art on it?
Only for you, Chris. Only for you. I'll see what I can do later.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate that.
I might have a picture of the two of us standing side by side.
I mean, you're not that short, but make sure the difference is clear, though, Simon. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll make sure there's a metre distance between the two of us, minimum.
So tell me a little bit about how businesses get involved with the Building Legacies programme, East London Business Place, and where they can find out a little bit more about you.
Right, okay. There's sort of three ways, really. We've got two websites, so they can go to the buildinglegacies.co.uk website. Alternatively, they can go to elbp.co.uk, or they can contact me directly. I've got no issues with that at all. It's simon.lewin, Lewin, at elbp.co.uk.
Great stuff. Thank you so much for joining us on Cervello Live. I
thank you for your time.
I really enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed the show.
Brilliant.
A couple of things that I just want to mention. We're going to be off for August, so we're not doing any Cervello Lives throughout August. Business is still open, and we're still working with clients, but we're just taking a break from the lives because we are going to be going on holiday, which I'm really excited about. So that'll be good. But we are back in September. We've got guests lined up now through September and October. But we're always looking for new guests to invite them to Cervello Live that can provide some insight to our audience. So if you run a business, support a business, can help share really useful knowledge relating to business and money with our audience, feel free to give us a shout. And the other thing I want to do is make sure that we're making these programs as relevant as possible. So one thing I'm going to ask you to do, and I'm going to jump on social media in a couple of days and do this, is ask you questions that you want answered. So anything money related, if I'm not the expert, I'll get somebody on who is. Let's start sort of making sure that we're breaking some of those stigmas about talking about money, and we're helping answer some of the questions that you've got. Have a lovely rest of the Thursday. Have a lovely weekend. Thank you again, Simon, for joining us. We really appreciate it. And,
thank you, Chris.
And I'll see you next week. Bye.